Hello, my name is David Ridgway and this is Kirklees Local TV's Weekly Wind-Up. This is where we bring you a digest of the week's news. We aim to be informative, interesting, amusing and provocative. I have two guests this week. Kim Warren from the Stirling Community Farm in Newsham, welcome, and Pastor Carlton Napier, who is a well-known community leader. Hi Carlton, good to see you again.
Good to see you, David.
Welcome to you both. Of course, we always want feedback from you. The Weekly Wind-Up can always be found on email at info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and you can search on Twitter at Weekly Wind-Up. We're covering three topics today. First of all, allotments. Are they really important and do we make best use of them? Secondly, the kidnapping of young girls in Nigeria, which is receiving a lot of prominence at the moment. And thirdly, parking. Is one person's space another person's irritation? And do we have any rights? So, Kim, I'm going to come to you first, and we're going to talk about your Stirling Community Farm project. Now, first of all, my understanding is that allotments really came into their own during the Second World War, but I guess they're a lot older than that, really. And today, their popularity is at an all-time high with a public desire for more and more land. But your community farm is a bit different from that.
That's right. Some 10 years ago, the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust started to realise that that they wanted to have a presence in West Yorkshire, with it being so densely populated. Lots of wildlife conservation and public engagement was happening elsewhere in Yorkshire, but nothing here in Kirklees in West Yorkshire. And over time, they realised that they needed to get a gateway site where people could become involved in the environment. So they looked at what Kirklees were doing, looked at what the local community were doing, looked at the local authority, and what they realised was there was quite a lot of urban fringe farmland that was being disused. That's what most of our countryside is here in Kirklees. We'll have some lovely woodlands in the cloughs that are a relic from the mill times. We have moorland, but in between that space is farmland, which of course, the purpose of which is to produce food. So Kirklees were finding it very difficult to tenant farms in urban situations. It's quite difficult for farmers to be on the edge of towns. But the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust were actually looking for farms that were close to people, because modern farming has actually really had quite an impact on wildlife. The pressure that is on farmers to farm land intensively means that farms have to be bigger, they have to be very mechanised, they have to use a lot of chemicals, and that's not good for wildlife. And of course, once those chemicals come into the food chain, that's not so good for us either. So, by happy coincidence, the food growing and allotments were becoming more popular, people were becoming more aware. We were looking for farmland. Kirklees had farmland that was difficult to tenant. And this was an ideal opportunity for the Yorkshire Wildlife Trust, with Kirklees' huge support, to take on what is actually a big farm, 240 acres.
Wow.
Yes, on all around Newsham, stretching from Lower Houses to Bury Brow. And it's a place that we can all relate to, because it's all the green fields that are just south of Castle Hill.
Carlton.
Yes, David.
Do you have an allotment?
I do.
Do you?
I do. And
Where's yours?
In Huddersfield at the moment.
You're not going to give a secret away in case someone comes and pinches your marrow?
Not at all. I have no worry at all. If somebody who is having a low day on finance take a bit of my marrow, I certainly haven't got a problem with that. But I do believe in the concept of the allotment. It can be traced way back to Anglo-Saxon time, and primarily
Well, that was strip farming.
Yes, but primarily it's a system allocated to people from the working class who were encouraged to grow their own food. They had to. And I do believe in the hard times like these, we should really look at the allotment. But what strikes me today is really the Stirling farming project here in our own backyard. And I believe it's a great concept, and we should encourage the schools, encourage adults, encourage young adults to go and look. This is more than the concept of just an allotment. This is a whole education process, but in it also we find a sustaining part of the allotment, which I do believe that in these hard times we should look to the allotment. Well, our parents, most African Caribbean parent here, used to grow a tomato inside the house and some thyme, some scallion, spring onion, etc. right inside, some potatoes right inside. We've always believed in the allotment.
I've got to stop you there. I haven't heard someone use the word scallion in conversation for years and years and years. Spring onion, oh yeah.
Yes.
But scallion, fantastic. Carry on.
Yes, so we believe it and we encourage our young people. It's hard now because everybody is into the fast food chain. Nobody wants to grow their own. But in these harsh economical times, we need to begin to encourage schools. And the farm here, the project here in Newsom is doing a brilliant job. Education, we're having how many children visiting the farm?
Oh, about thousands, 5,000 children in 3 years.
Well done.
Absolutely.
To Kirklees. When other people, other boroughs are selling off the lands to developers, Kirklees once again with a feather in its cap, preserving the land for such a terrific project. Well
Absolutely.
done.
I think so too. I think it's quite remarkable, really. So how can the public get involved with your project?
Well, we are renovating the farm. I didn't mention that it's actually quite decrepit. It was left into decline. It was a dairy farm, so it was 10 years of decline. So a lot of people come, not for food growing, surprisingly, but because they're really passionate about redeveloping this farm. And we're restoring it at the moment. We'll have some buildings of varying ages. And so a lot of people come to do building work. We're actually restoring the farmhouse at the moment. And that's what's great about the project. Everybody can get involved with all different interests. On Tuesdays, we have a volunteer day. A lot of the volunteers come to maintain the food garden.
Yeah.
And they do a fantastic job. And through their maintenance and their hard work, that means the school children can come in and really not have to tackle a lot of weeds, get involved, sow a seed, harvest. The food goes into our kitchen. Sometimes volunteers are cooking our produce and that gets served to the community. And every first Sunday of the morning of the month, people can come in and eat our local food, which is very popular. And the children can do activities relating to the environment and farming.
Excellent. Well, that's been really fascinating. Thank you both very much for talking to me about that and for what is obviously an exceptionally good and well organised system that you're bringing back into Kirklees. I was also particularly interested in the comment that you made right up front that it's also helping wildlife. Because I think the wildlife is a really important part and often a very forgotten part of our lifestyle in this country. And as we become more and more urbanised, we become less and less involved with the wildlife. And I think that's a great shame. I think that should be we should try and turn that around completely. So thank you very much indeed for giving me a very fascinating conversation. We're going to take a break now, and we'll come back to you a bit later on. You can always contact the Weekly Wind-Up on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and you can search for us on Twitter at Weekly Wind-Up. Thank you very much. See you shortly. Welcome back. This is Kirklees Local TV's Weekly Wind-Up. You can find us on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com and search on Twitter at Weekly Wind-Up. We'll all have heard in the news about the kidnapping of 276 girls in Nigeria by an organisation called Boko Haram. I understand that 50 have already escaped. And it's something which, in England, which is a very soft, liberal society, we just do not understand the pressures that are put on local people by this type of difficulty. Now, Carlton, can you tell me anything about Boko Haram?
Basically, in Nigeria, we've got different groups who are just not willing to conform to the modern world and standard of living. And this is a group that is definitely against Western education. They want to keep people in the dark. And what better way to start with children? Because if we expose them, they're educated, they're enlightened, and they are the future. They're going to change the face of Nigeria. I think it's an atrocity. I think these people should be sought out just the same way we move into Afghan and Iraq. We should move straight into Nigeria for the release of these children, find them, and certainly get rid of organizations like this. These are the organizations that will continue to make the world a place where people fear to live. These children, young girls, we don't know what is happening to them. I know this is a continuous thing in Nigeria. The world at the moment seems to be turning a blind eye to even one that has been kidnapped. We seem to be taking it a bit further now because there's 200 plus, so the number seems big. But it's happening on a daily basis. This brainwashing is going on for too long. When is the UN going to act? When is the world going to come in and say, we need to put a stop to it? Are we going to bring in the High Commissioner, the Nigerian High Commissioner, and ask some serious questions about it?
Do you think this is predominantly a United Nations matter or a Commonwealth matter?
It is both, because Nigeria is part of the Commonwealth, and our Queen, who is head of the Commonwealth, need to take action. It is not isolated. How can we have all these eyes of the world watching a situation like this blowing up in our face times and times again, and all we do is sit back and ponder? Somebody needs to be brought to the table and questions need to be asked.
Harsh world, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, difficult. I mean, we do find ourselves living in a country here in Britain where we have our own difficulties and problems, as we talked about earlier on. But by the same token, the outcry that would happen if 200 young girls were taken from, let us say, Huddersfield and just disappeared, the reaction would be absolutely immense. And yet, because it's several thousand miles away and it's in a different continent, are people just shrugging their shoulders and pretending it doesn't happen?
It's hypocrisy, David. We go in for diamonds, we go in for the oil, we go in for whatever cargo that we need that is going to sustain us and keep us here in the Western world. This social structure that is being damaged, when you start to infiltrate children, you are borderlining on one of the worst crimes, and these people should be brought to the Justice Board.
I think it'd be very difficult to organise the Commonwealth or indeed Britain to take action directly. But if there was a United Nations resolution, then I do feel that would be an appropriate way forward. But interference in other countries is becoming an increasingly difficult thing to do. But I agree, the effect on one child, let alone 276, and particularly young girls. I mean, the thing which resonates in my mind is the fact that if nothing is done about this, I will sell them into slavery. And that's what the leader of Boko Haram has actually stated.
Yeah. In every society, you're going to have these radical groups, David. I mean, we are aware that people want to have their own opinion. So you always have these radical groups in society. I don't think we're ever going to get rid of them. But something needs to happen where our children are concerned.
Sure.
And I feel now that Nigeria is brought into the limelight one more time with such an atrocity, I think we should be able to give some time to it.
When this comment of being sold into slavery is made, how many people realise that some of those slaves actually come back into the UK?
I do.
It's absolutely outrageous, but there we are. Thank you both for that. We'll move straight on to a much less heart-rending problem, but nevertheless still a particularly difficult one, which is parking. Do you live in Huddersfield, Kim?
No, I'm very lucky. I've got off-road parking of my own.
Oh, you star. Do you live in Huddersfield, Pastor?
Partly, yes.
Do you park on the road?
Partly, and I am annoyed at times, I must say.
Really? Why?
Yes, I think there are too many cars on the road, and in one family there are just too many cars. And I will not call any nation's name, but you can't have 6 cars to one home. It is unfair, David.
Unfair on whom?
Unfair on all the other residents in the community. When in one home, 6 cars belong to one home, and then you have to park almost.
Why are they able to, I'm sorry to cut you off there, but why are they able to cope on this particular problem in London?
I don't think they're coping in London at all. I visit London very regularly, and almost every second you see those trucks taking up the cars off the road. No, the fines are enormous in London. They're having serious problems in London.
But they also have a decent public transport system.
They do. I agree.
And we don't.
I agree, but it doesn't stop people from taking the view that I need to come home after a hard day and I don't have to park a mile away from my door.
Well, they do park a mile away from their door in London, that is true. Well, not maybe a mile away. But do you know that there are no rights for the public to park on the road?
Yes, I would think there are not rights in that term, but there are parking rights for people. There is a bit of the disability right to park.
That's specific.
That's right, and even that is abused. People get so angry that they park there, not considering that somebody who is less fortunate.
Well, let's just take that as an example. We have parking facilities in supermarket car parks for the disabled and indeed for nursing mothers.
Yes.
Do you think first of all, shall I say, Kim, do you think it's right that those facilities should be made available for the disabled and for mums?
Absolutely.
Well, I do too. Do you think it's right that the people who abuse those should be fined?
Certainly.
Yes, and I think they are more so now, aren't they?
Well, yes, indeed. Well, that's good. Well, we're all agreed on that. So, should we have similar facilities on the road?
I can't see why not.
Would you pay for it?
Well, quite a few people would rather pay for it than to receive a fine for £200+. Depends on how much you're going to charge it, because I notice most councils seem to use the parking facility as a means of earning.
Do you think we park on the roads in a manner which is acceptable to other road users? In other words, in Kirklees, there's quite a number of places where there's a long stretch of road which is available for parking, and yet you could get into a stretch of road maybe properly parked 10 or 12 cars, but often because they're so badly parked you can only get 8. Is that selfish driving? Inconsiderate?
I don't think it's so much
silly?
selfish driving. It's just some people, it's just lack of experience. They're parking. They just want to get the car down. They wouldn't care who else is to be parked. And we don't want to blame the ladies, because I am not sexist. And some people say that ladies don't park properly.
I made no such comment.
No, that's right. I'm saying it's everybody. It's everybody. We've got new drivers who are parking. And they need the experience, and they just drive and probably take up 2 car park space. So we've got to give and take.
What I'd like to ask is, do you feel that the price of parking in the established car parks, the Kirklees car parks, in our major town centres is too high?
To be honest, I might make myself very unpopular here. I think we should pay for parking. I think that motorists have started to think that they have the right to take their motor cars everywhere. And I find it quite easy to park in Huddersfield, to be honest. I've lived in other parts of the country where it's prohibitively expensive to park cars, but it's unfortunately a necessary evil to take the motor car out of the city. There's so many people cannot afford to buy a car. They don't find it easy to walk around the streets around parked cars that you talked about before. And I know we don't have the best public transport system in the country, but actually there's no reason why we shouldn't take a bus into the city for short trips. I don't think that we should think that we have the right to park our cars anywhere just because we have a motor car.
We're getting a lot of conflicting imbalances here. For example, if the car parks were cheaper, would that encourage more car drivers to come into our town centres?
It's a good point. I think they're fairly priced, actually. I don't think that they are expensive compared to other cities here.
But why did they cut the price in December before Christmas?
Well, absolutely, to get people in.
Yeah, and if the bus services were better, would the necessity for car parks be so great?
One would hope so. Looking at park and rides in other places, they run so efficiently, and it's a good, equitable system. They're nice and accessible. It is just a greener, more pleasant way to be in a town centre when you're not battling with people queuing in cars.
Indeed. So you're lucky with having off-street car parking, which is fine. You're unlucky with having on-street parking, but you try your best to cope.
No, I totally agree with Kim. I do believe that the cost should go up for drivers who just come into town, just park. Some of these young, fit people who are coming to park, and they need to walk and exercise and leave those spaces, more disabled space, more for mom and tots, and then we will see maybe a change.
Well, I want to leave this conversation on one last topic, because it's not actually to do with parking, but it's to do with driving kids to school. Do you think that we should encourage our mums and dads to have their children walk to school?
Categorically, yes.
Categorically, yes. They should walk and they should take the bus to school.
What about parking on the zigzags? Should we make that far more stringently covered?
Yes, it should. It's not a difficult thing to enforce. It's only for a short period of time in the day, let's be honest.
That's right. A camera should always be there and give them a fine instantly.
Absolutely. Outside my local school, it's absolute mayhem from from 8 o'clock through to 9 o'clock, and it's dead for the rest of the day until 3 o'clock, and a quarter to 4, it's dead again. It's very, very difficult to organise, but the zigzags is a good system, not used. Do you think we're going to resolve the parking problem?
No.
Kim?
Everybody wants a car. We'll never solve that.
I'd like to think positive about it. I think we need to get out of the attitude that people deserve to have motor cars.
Indeed.
Right next to their houses.
Well, thank you both for making this a very interesting day for me. Thank you both for coming on to the panel this week. Kim, for telling us all about the Sturley Community Farm. It sounds like a really exciting project, and I'm so pleased to hear that it's building, and that's really good news. Carlton, good to see you again. Thanks very much for coming along and joining us. We want your comments, of course. You can always contact Kirklees Local TV on info@kirkleeslocaltv.com, and you can search for us on Twitter @Weekly Wind-Up. Thank you very much for watching.